extra day. Greg, would you like to start? Are you back from getting it
Yes.
printed off? Okay.
Yes,
You're on.
Mary, can you, I'm on. Okay, thank
You're
you.
on.
I'm on.
You're on.
Uh, an extra, an extra day. If every year had an extra day, the things that I might do, I'd paddle down the Amazon in a canoe. I'd write a 5-part symphony with the cello and kazoo. I'd topple this bad government in an unexpected coup. Who wrote this? If every year had an extra day, there'll be no stopping me. I'd fix the dripping tap upstairs. I'd save the honey bee. I'd brush up on my mandolin, earn my black belt in Bing Shu. I'd stop the earth from warming. I want to say that again. I'd stop the earth from warming, then learn to water ski. If every year had an extra day, the things I might achieve, I'd launch my own cosmetic range and sculpture out of cheese. If I bring lasting peace in the Middle East and help the refugees, I drive around the country at 59 or 80 degrees. But when an extra day does come by, it always seems the same. Just another square on which to land when playing Atlas game. I should care about each one of them as I make my way around. Life shuffles by in smaller steps, not in leaps and bounds. Thank you for letting me read that. It's by Brian Bitston, and Kelly found that for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We have an anniversary, a couple of them. Gail Rothrock, 19 years, and Gary Gardner, 46 years as a downtown Kiwanian. So we congratulate both of them. Is Steve Farrow on the call yet? Okay, well, I'm going to report about some awards that we have. Our first girls basketball scholarship last Friday at Gingrich Fieldhouse. We presented it to Kylie Butts from PMHS, and congrats to North Central High School for winning their first girls basketball state title. And the first time a Black female coach has won, her name was Janin Lampley, for the IHSAA Girls Basketball State Scholarships. Lamita Steele is going to award another scholarship, $3,500, to the Marion County Female Athlete Award for the High School Sports Awards at Clues Hall on March 23rd. And I want to thank you for a donation. And where's my other sheet? I lost my other sheet. Hold on. There we are. And let's see, we're opening registration for the 78th High School Basketball State Finals Lunch, which is going to be at Primo's on the 29th of March. Same location as last year. Nominations for the academic MVP are due in 2 weeks, and they'll be looking for a small group to review those scholarship applications. So let Kelly know if you're interested in doing that. It doesn't take long, but we really could use your support in determining who that winner is going to be, and reminding everyone of the program and to plan to attend, because it should be great. And you know, Primo's is a great location with good food. So this month we had a small group at the social supper downtown. It was great, and we got there before all the crowd came in. Food was fabulous. Next month, because of all the baseball activities and basketball activities, excuse me, our social supper is going to be probably the last week of March, and that information will go out to you once I decide where we're going to be. It's probably going to be in the east side since we haven't been there for a while, but I'll let you know. So upcoming events, the Abe Lincoln Committee is meeting this Saturday to review the events and make plans for the next program, which is our 50th, which is going to be a big to-do. So if you can make that, that'd be great. On March 7th, here at the Columbia Club will be Mel McMahon from Indiana Originals. She also, if you know, because we've had a good relationship with her for a while, she announces the Golden Kindle competition with Rotary, so she'll be here to let us know if we won or lost this year. On the 12th is a Zoom meeting, and on the 18th, Monday, is IOZO's lunch brunch. So let Roger know if you're interested in that. On the 21st is a Zoom meeting. We will hear from Howard Kellman and his 50th year of announcing baseball. And on May 2nd at the Columbia Club, we will learn about the Olympic swimming trials. So go natatorium. So as you may know, the office, the Kiwanis office, they're doing a lot of different things with their computers. So our website, indykiwanis.org, will be on pause for a while starting tomorrow as the portal buzz, which is what we had for years, is going to retire. So during that transition, you'll be receiving more listings of upcoming events and registration links. You can also access from your copies of the newsletter. So stay tuned for preliminary versions of the new website, which will be coming in a few weeks. Hopefully cross your fingers because we know there's always glitches with that. So please be patient. So grants, we've had a lot of grants being given out. I'm going to start with the grant I gave to the Indiana Center for Prevention of Youth Abuse and Suicide. I met with Melissa Peregrine, who's the executive director, a $5,000 grant. And as you may not know, 95% of child abuse is preventable. And so years ago, the state said in every school, kids should be taught how to prevent abuse and suicide. And this is their mission. They're not in all 93 counties, but there are others like them. I think they're in 12 counties right now, and they do a fabulous job. So they were very appreciative of the money, and they will be putting it to good use. Let's see. So Trina's not on the call. Let's go to our speaker now. So it's great to have Dr. Brian Murphy with us from the Holcomb Observatory and Planetarium. He's been there since 1993 as a professor of physics and astronomy at Butler. In 2012, he received the University Award for Distinguished Research, Scholarship, or Creative Work, the highest accolade for a faculty member. He's been a guest on NPR, BBC, and the National Geographic Channel on subjects including astronomy, space science, physics, and general science. He attended the University of Iowa and earned his master's in astronomy and PhD in astrophysics at IU. And Dr. Murphy, take it away.
Sure. Thank you. Everyone can hear me, is that right?
Yes.
And you can see my screen. Okay, great. So my purpose today, besides informing you about an eclipse, which I think most of you know is coming April 8th, is to tell you why this is such an important event, okay? So what I'm going to do is go through sort of why total eclipses are so much different than any other type of astronomical phenomena, even other eclipses that we have. That's my primary mission here, to make sure you understand also what to look for during this eclipse. So I want to start out with just how rare are eclipses in general. Let me just get my cursor going here. We have 6 types of eclipses. I think most people have seen a lunar eclipse before. We have 3 types: total, partial, penumbral. Penumbral, most people don't even notice. You never hear us say anything about those because they're really sort of drab, okay, so to speak. Total solar or total lunar eclipses, they're sort of nice to see. The sun or the moon takes on that nice orangish hue, as you can see there. And our chance of seeing one is about every 2¼ years. Chance of seeing a partial eclipse, lunar eclipse that is once every 2 years. And seeing a penumbral eclipse is about once in every 1½ years. So they're relatively common events, in other words, is what I'm saying. So think of it that way. We have these common events that we see often, and it doesn't require a telescope to see these things. That's the other nice thing. And I do have a landscaper outside right now who's doing so if you hear some noise, that's what it is, okay? They conveniently got out here. So now solar eclipses are slightly different. And this is showing a partial solar eclipse. And a partial solar eclipse occurs somewhere on the Earth's surface once every 6 months, and it typically covers 1/4 of the Earth's surface. So they are relatively frequent events. The thing is about these is, and by the way, one thing about a partial solar eclipse, unless you knew about it, someone told you there's a partial solar eclipse occurring and get your eclipse glasses on and look at the sun, you wouldn't even know it's occurring because your eye adapts so well to the decrease and increase of sunlight that we have during these events. It's only as we get into a total solar eclipse does the eye really take notice of that. So, partial solar eclipses, as we said, once every 6 months on the Earth's surface, and your chance of seeing one is about once every 2.25 years. As a matter of fact, we had a partial solar eclipse back in October of 2023, if you remember. You might not have saw it because it was mostly cloudy that day. We got a few peaks of it at the observatory, and the sun was about 54% eclipsed. Your eye wouldn't have noticed it because it adapts so well. It's such a great dynamic device. Now, most people think total solar eclipses are rare in their frequency. They are not. They occur somewhere on the Earth's surface every 2 years or so. So that's not all that rare. What makes them rare to see, though, that's the difference. Your chances of seeing a total solar eclipse at any given location on the Earth is once every 390 years. That's what makes this such a remarkable event, because most people on this planet have never seen one, particularly considering 70% of the Earth's surface is composed of water or has water. Well, let me show you why there's such a difference between a partial solar eclipse and a total solar eclipse. And this diagram here sort of shows that. Can you guys see my cursor right there? I assume you can see it moving around. Is that right? Okay. So looking at this, you can see the path for 2024, what we have coming up on April 8th. You have this narrow, dark path, and I have it showing about 3:06, 3:08 p.m., right smack dab, this little dot over Indianapolis. And it's only going to be a path about 110, 115 miles wide. But notice nearly all of North America here inside the circle will be having a partial solar eclipse. But unless they know it's happening, they won't even know there's an eclipse occurring. You have to be very near or in that path of totality. And this path of totality will only cover roughly 0.25% of the Earth's surface when it occurs. Whereas the partial path, which will be this whole band here pretty much, that's going to cover roughly 1/4 of the Earth's surface. So even though total eclipses are relatively frequent, once every 2 years, your chance of seeing one is extremely rare because that little dot is so narrow, okay? And that dot, by the way, is moving at 2,000 miles an hour across the Earth's surface. So it will go from one side of Indiana to the other, I believe in somewhere around 4 to 5 minutes is all it takes. That's how fast it's moving, because basically it's the moon that's orbiting the Earth, and that's the speed at which the moon orbits around the Earth. So let's look at Indiana in general and say, well, when was our last solar eclipse? Well, it depends where you were. Well, not where you were. None of us were around, I assume, at that time, because the last total solar eclipse to occur anywhere in Indiana was in 1869. But as you can see, that only covered the southwest portion of the state, this region right in here. So it's been 155 years since anywhere in Indiana has seen a total solar eclipse. Well, let's get more specific. Let's talk about Indianapolis, Marion County. Well, the last total solar eclipse to occur in what was to become Indianapolis was in 1205, 819 years ago, as you can see. And if you notice here, it divided Indiana in two. So the southwest portion of Indianapolis actually did have an eclipse that year. But if you go slightly east of Michigan Road, in other words, to where Butler University is, and pretty much a lot of east central Indiana, the last total solar eclipse to occur, there we are, there, sorry, I went backwards. The last total solar eclipse to occur at Butler and northeast Indianapolis and east central Indiana was nearly 1,200 years ago. So it's been a long wait for many sections here, but you can see it's sort of hit and miss where these things occur. You could be very unlucky and not have one for 1,000 years or 2,000 years, as we've seen with, say, East Central Indiana. And I did do the mathematical sort of look at this. In a 5,000-year period, I believe it was from 2,000 to 2,000 years ago to 3,000 years, roughly a 5,000-year span. We had somewhere in the neighborhood, will be or have been 11 total solar eclipses in 5,000 years on the circle at downtown Indianapolis. So it does show that even though total solar eclipses occur somewhere every 2 years on the Earth's surface, they're very rare to see at any given place on the Earth, just to the narrowness of that path of totality. And you're going to hear this a lot in the coming month and a half, people talking about path of totality, why that's so important to be inside that. So let's step you through the eclipse. And a lot of this, the first part, will just be, say, from partial solar eclipses. And I know a lot of you saw the 2017 partial solar eclipse that we had here in Indianapolis. And I want to spell right out here right now. That was a 90% or so eclipse sun. So the sun was diminished by 90% in its light. We were only getting 1/10 of the sunlight, but you wouldn't have known it if you were outside because your eye so easily adapts to brightness changes, okay? So let's talk about partial solar eclipses. I believe for Indianapolis area, and if you're anywhere else in Indiana, you can subtract or add roughly 2.5 minutes to this. And you can go on our website. We have a thing where you can click and find your location and what the exact timings are, when totality will be, things like that. But we have this thing called first contact. And if it's a nice clear day at the observatory, and when that moon just first starts to move in this direction across this solar surface, remember it's in front of the solar surface, not really on it. And by the way, you do need your eclipse glasses to look at the sun then, or a safe solar telescope, like we'll have close to 20 of them at Holcomb Observatory. But that first little nip it takes out of here of the solar surface, we call that first contact, when it just begins to come over the sun's surface. And there'll be a lot of anticipation. People are going to be waiting, watching the sun with their eclipse glasses for an hour. And then when this occurs at roughly 1:50 p.m., there'll be a big hoopla. Finally, it started. It's really sort of it's not necessarily spectacular, but it's finally, okay, we've started this event. And as we get further and further and further into the eclipse, as more and more and more and more of the sun gets covered by the moon, that's where we start to see, for instance, the canopy of trees, if we have any leaves out at that time, or you can even use your fingers like this. That's where we start to get what I call eclipse shadows. And notice how you actually start to see crescents and things like that. These little sort of holes through the canopy of trees start to act literally like pinhole cameras. I think a lot of you probably as a child, they told you, poke a hole in one side of paper and project it onto another. That's called a pinhole camera. It's a great way to observe the eclipse if you don't have eclipse glasses, or you can just use nature's pinhole cameras such as this here. And so this is actually something that's really amazing to see, particularly as you get close to like 80, 90% eclipsed. You get these really nice crescents coming through the canopy. Normally they're just circles and you've never realized they're actually little images of the sun. And if you want to make your own pinhole camera, well, you don't even have to make one. Just go get a kitchen utensil like a colander, and then you can actually have a whole lot of crescents shining down on a piece of paper. Or you can get a piece of cardboard and spell your name out on it and have your name spelled out in crescents, okay? So there are multiple things you can do with this. But this shows you some of those things just to observe the various phases as it gets closer and closer and more eclipsed. Now, one other phenomena that can occur, and this is particularly as you get into that 80, 90% eclipse and toward totality, is the changes in weather. One thing we noticed in 2017 in the path of totality in southern Illinois, we noticed that the wind died down because it's basically the equivalent of going into twilight or dusk. The wind calms down. We noticed the temperature starting to drop. It really was hot at the beginning of the eclipse, but as we got to 90, 95% eclipse, it was quite comfortable out because we had much less sunlight hitting the Earth's surface. And because there's much less sunlight hitting the Earth's surface, there's less convection, and the clouds actually dissipated. We thought we might have clouds. The clouds actually started to disappear about a half hour before the eclipse. And because it's sort of this dark spot moving over the Earth's surface, as we'll see, what happens is you get this wind change and almost a wind vortex. I think it was Edmund Halley's comet fame, who was the first to actually notice this effect. And just like in the evening, the humidity will rise also. So you have all these different temperature effects that it could occur, and humidity, all related to the amount of sunlight you're receiving. Now, the real magic starts in that last few minutes before totality. And I just want to tell you right now, you're going to hear it again, a 99% eclipse sun is still 0% totality. That is one thing we're trying to get out in the news, that if you have a 99% eclipse sun, you're still not seeing the grand event. It's still a partial eclipse. And we tell people, drive that extra 5 miles you need to just to get 5 miles into the path, because it will make all the difference in what you see. But as we enter that last minute before totality, you still don't want to take your glasses off, because notice, it's going to be 10,000 times brighter than the sun is at totality still. It's still very bright and can damage your eyes. And at this point, your eye starts to notice that it is getting dimmer outside, that it's sort of like as you're approaching sunset, perhaps. And one thing about this, I think all of you have seen stars twinkle, for instance, at night. That's not the stars actually changing their brightness. That's just due to atmospheric turbulence. Particularly in the winter, after we have a cold front come through and you have what's called a crisp, clear night. That's actually not a great night to observe for astronomers, because the air is so turbulent, it blurs images. And then the stars cause to twinkle because the stars are going through different densities of air. Well, they're point sources. When we get down to this thin crescent like this, what happens is that we get this linear feature almost, or crescent shape instead, and we get these bands coming off across the Earth's surface, sort of like what you see in my background of my slide here. And those are called shadow bands. And shadow bands begin to appear in that final minute before eclipse. But I'm going to give you a hint. Don't look for them before eclipse. You want to be looking up toward the sky. Look for them right after the totality, okay? That's when you want to look for these, because all the big stuff is over. Now you can look at the ground and look for these bands. It's sort of like if you think about a swimming pool, the waves on top of a swimming pool and the light from the sun going down to it. At the bottom of the swimming pool, you see these ripples and waves sort of moving along the surface. That's the equivalent here. Instead of having water, we have air and we have the sunlight coming down through it in this case. So shadow bands begin to appear. Here's a classic sketch from, I believe it was an 1870 eclipse somewhere in Italy, showing how someone saw these really vibrant shadow bands. Now, to see these things, it has to be very clear. If you have some clouds or thick cirrus clouds, they probably won't appear because you don't get this. But I'll show you a movie here that I found. This is one of the best movies. Like I said, your eye is very good at picking up subtle differences in brightness where cameras are not. But here's someone tried to do this by using a whiteboard, literally pointed toward the sun and photographing the whiteboard itself. And so this here, let's start this. So I think I have it going. Yes, it's going here. And so we're talking about that last minute before eclipse. And I'm going to fast forward. Okay, so fast forward, and you see them starting to appear here, those little ripples. And as notice, it's starting to get darker real quickly. This is in the final minute here. And you'll start to see them get more rapid also as they move onward. And someone gets in the way, and I think if I had the sound up, you would hear them yell at them, "Get out of the way, you're ruining my thing there," okay? But as we get closer and closer and closer to eclipse, the totality here, and you'll see it getting darker and darker here. You see these things becoming more and more prominent. You can even see them on the sort of garbage can down here just below. But they're very prominent on this sheet. See how they get faster and closer together there? And there's the person walking in front. There they are. And what happens? You're in totality now. And so it's like twilight, okay? And then you have your few minutes of totality. And then we come out the other side here. I'm trying to find the other side where we come out for you. And there we're about to come out. Here we come out of totality. You see them again, and they're in a slightly different direction also. They're more, as you can see, horizontal versus vertical. It just depends on the orientation of how the moon is coming in there. And I recommend looking for these shadow bands after totality. So you aren't wasting your time looking down before totality where all the action's occurring. Now, one thing about these shadow bands, to best see them, you need a uniform surface. We threw down a white sheet and just pinned it down with rocks. So I recommend doing something like that if you're, say, looking at this from your backyard or something. So now, as I said, this shadow of the moon, as it approaches, it's going to approach us at 2,000 miles per hour. And if you happen to look at toward the west, like 10 seconds before totality, you will see the western sky looking very dark because it's coming at you. For us, this eclipse, I believe it's coming from the west-southwest toward us. And as it moves, this gives a good example here. Let me pause this here and just start it from the beginning. This is from the 2017 eclipse, where someone basically sent up the equivalent of weather balloon with lots of cameras on it, and it got up to 30 miles above the Earth's surface. So not space, but fairly high, so it could look down and see things off in the distance. So let's take a look at this shadow as it comes toward us. And this is right near the Nebraska border. And there's the umbra coming at us, as you can see, right there. And I'll just back it up a bit there. You can see the shadow. In this case, it was only about 70 miles wide or so. But as it comes toward us, now you can see this weather balloon is in the, whoops, sorry about that. Let's do that again. You can see that this weather balloon is in the middle of the umbra, all right? So we're sitting in the middle of the umbra. Down on the Earth's surface, this is where you're in totality. Out here, you might be 99% eclipse, but it is not dark. As you can see, the sun is still shining. So let's see it go race off toward the southeast, in this case, toward Missouri, and to where I was in southern Illinois, and there it goes over the limb of the Earth. So that gives you an idea how this umbra, this darkest part of the moon's shadow where the sun cannot be seen at all. So as this approaches, you get something called the diamond ring effect. And it's obvious in the slide here why it is referred to as a diamond ring. You literally have the last little fragment of the solar surface peeking through a valley of the moon here. And then within 5 to 10 seconds, it's completely out. And then you're in totality. So let's take a look at actually what happens. Remember what I told you, the human eye is very good at adjusting to brightness. But because this happens so quickly in those final, say, 30 seconds, your eye's trying to adjust quickly and it's not adjusting fast enough like it does going from daytime to sunset to twilight. And so what we have, I want you to look at this. This is how we perceive the illumination in your eye. This is a representation I took from some data of what's called the illuminance or irradiance from the sun during an eclipse. And so here we are, 76 minutes before eclipse. Perfectly clear day, of course, in Indianapolis on April 8th, and we don't notice anything occurring. All right, we get to 90% eclipse. The human eye might begin to perceive, if you're looking around, that it's not quite the same, but probably not. You almost have to get to 95% eclipse. By the way, this was the equivalent of 2017 in Indianapolis. And this is why people don't understand why this is a big deal going into totality. We're about to go in the next minute down the rabbit hole here, as you can see. For Indianapolis, we basically did this, came down here in 2017 and just jutted across here and back out the other side without going down that deep, deep hole of darkness like we get when the umbra passes over us. So now we're here, 99% eclipse, 1 minute before eclipse. This is where the eye is really starting to perceive things are changing on me, and it's starting to get dark. Even though 1% of the sunlight is coming through, keep that in mind. Your eye's adjusting quite well. As you know, at sunset, you can still see, you can drive, you can read still outdoors. And then we get that diamond ring effect. The sunlight is almost gone. This would be equivalent to sunset now, all right? So notice how much we're down to 1/10,000th of total solar brightness, 1/100th of 1%. And then we go into totality, where we're down by over a factor of 100,000 in how bright it was. And the sun, in this case, is going to be close to 1,000,000 times dimmer because we no longer have the photosphere, that surface of the sun showing. And it's about the equivalent of a half hour after twilight. And so this is, this is where all the magic is occurring, in that minute before totality, in totality, in the minute after totality. Other than that, it's just pretty much a partial eclipse, which most people aren't that impressed by, even though with your eclipse glasses, you see the neat crescent of them. Now, one thing here, you can take off your eclipse glasses at totality. And we're saying the sun is perfect. The totally eclipsed sun is perfectly safe to look at. In fact, you want to take them off, otherwise you're not going to see anything in the sky. So, you know, I remember some people keeping them on as we went into totality. I yelled out, get your eclipse glasses off now. That it's safe to look, because you don't want to miss that solar corona, which is absolutely gorgeous. It literally looks like a black hole has opened up in the sky in front of you, is what it looks like, which you can't describe it to anyone unless they have seen it. I mean, it's just indescribable. All right, so here's a question, and then we're back up. Here's a question I get: what if it's cloudy that day? Well, you aren't going to see the solar corona, okay, and that what I call that black hole in the sky. But the plunge into darkness will be much, much more dramatic. And that's because we aren't going to be receiving any light from outside the path of totality. And I'll talk about that later on down the road here when we get to talking about the glow along the horizon. Because it's cloudy, that drop into darkness will be very sudden. And it's like, oh, who turned out the lights on me? Very quickly, okay? It's something that you don't have so much with a clear sky, because with a clear sky, you're getting light from outside the path of totality, where the sky is still lit up from 50 miles away. Okay, so some things. So let's say we're 5 seconds into totality. You might notice this faint ring on the edge as such. Remember, the moon was moving in this direction. I try to give the orientation, how it's going to be looking for us. And it just hasn't covered out this outer layer we call the chromosphere. Chromo means, I believe, color, so it has this pinkish color. And just to show you some other images of it, this is more of a telescopic image of what the chromosphere looks like. You can see that faint pink band here. By the way, it's basically caused by, it's the coolest part of the sun. It's about 10,000 degrees Kelvin. It's best seen right after that diamond ring effect, right when you go into totality. Now, if you see it on the back end of totality, that tells you get ready for the sun to come back out, okay? So remember that. If you see this pinkish starting to occur on the 4 o'clock position of the sun, it's time to get those eclipse glasses back on. Okay, so the solar corona. This is really the spectacular thing, and it's hard to describe. You can't really represent it in pictures. We're in mid-totality, and let's talk about this. And the solar corona, when it's out, I just want to mention, it's 10,000 times or 10 million times less dense than the solar surface, but it's at 1 million degrees centigrade, so roughly 2 million degrees Fahrenheit, and it's 1 million times dimmer than the solar surface. So the only time it can be seen by the human eye is during a total solar eclipse. That's the key thing I want to point out here. That's what makes these things so spectacular. Besides, it gets dark out, okay? Now remember, it will not be nighttime. It will be like twilight, okay? So the corona is the big thing you want to see here, okay? That's why I say, get those glasses off. You're missing the whole show otherwise. Get them back on once the sun comes back up. Okay, so let's look at what we may see. So this is sort of a representation I made of some of the planets, obvious things that might be visible. And this is looking toward the south right here. So the sun's going to be sort of in a south-southwest position, about 50 degrees in altitude, 90 degrees being overhead. Just to the lower right of the sun, Venus will be so obvious to you. It will be the brightest thing other than the solar corona. Jupiter, you'll see it off to the almost exactly the opposite side. Should be fairly apparent to you. These two things will be very obvious. You'll see Venus and Jupiter. They are the two brightest things in the sky, other than the sun and the moon, okay, and even in the night sky, just to let you know. That's why they're more prominent than the stars. If you got real good eyes, you might pick out Saturn and Mars here, but they're going to be somewhat more faint. And notice the sky isn't dark. Like I said, it goes to almost an indigo blue, dark blue is what it goes to. And then as far as stars, I pointed out some stars right here, and we'll be posting these things on Facebook periodically as we approach the eclipse, so make them available to everyone. And you'll probably, by the way, see these same slides in the media, because they've had these same slides available to them because, oh, give them to us. We want these. These are great graphics, okay? So you're going to see a lot of these put out there with our little Butler logo on it too. So, you know, we said just a little self-promotion to get out there in media. But so you'll see the brighter, certainly Jupiter and Venus are the key things to look at. And as I said, right before totality, look toward the west and you'll see the dark shadow, that umbra coming at you. It'll be lighter off to the east where the sun's shining more. And when it's right over the top of you, and this was taken from, I believe, 2019 from Totality Observatory in South America. A lot of astronomers went down there. It happened to come right over this major observatory, one of these paths of totality. You can see Venus down here at the horizon. You can see this totally eclipsed sun here. And you can see this glow along the horizon. Notice right here, here's the edge of the umbra that happens to be right smack dab over the top of you. Off over here to the right, okay, the sun's shining up there, and it's shining. You'll see an orange glow all along the horizon, like, hold it, where's the sun setting? It's not setting, it's overhead or nearly overhead. And you'll see where the sun is still shining, say up north of Kokomo, down south of, say, Bedford, things like that. Off to the east, off to the west, you'll have this orange glow surrounding the horizon. So if you're on a taller building, that's where it's really obvious. And I've told some of the media with their tower cams, like in downtown Indianapolis, point it off to the southwest right before the eclipse so you could perhaps see the shadow coming at us. Okay, well, let's say we miss this eclipse, okay? And when's the next good opportunity? If I don't want to move much, but if let's say, okay, I'll travel to within the continental US to see one. The next, what I call, and notice I say good total solar eclipse, is in August, I believe it's August of 2045 here. There is one in 2044, but it's really low to the horizon, so it'd be hard to see. But this one here is going to be a 6-minute long totality. And you can see it passes down through Arkansas, down here. And actually, I am right here right now where my cursor is in Melbourne Beach, Florida. So hopefully I'm alive then for this one, because I can just go outside my front door and watch the eclipse. But this gives you an idea of what we have coming up in this this century here. Okay, you can see the one we had in 2017, relatively narrow path. It was about a 2.5-minute eclipse. 2024 right here, and during this one we will have, as I said, close to 3 minutes 50 seconds in downtown Indianapolis. I think it's 3:42 at Butler. The further north you go, the less it gets till you get to, say, Kokomo. Kokomo is split in two, by the way. North side of Kokomo, no total eclipse. South side of Kokomo, total eclipse. And that's why I say get into that path of totality. A 99% eclipse, partially eclipsed sun is still 0% totality. You don't see all the magic I mentioned. Now, want to mention one other thing we're doing at Butler. We are part of a NASA NSF funded community research study, and we're going to be studying the polarization of the solar corona. This is something, and you can see all the organizations: NASA, National Science Foundation, Southwest Research Institute, National Solar Observatory, also the National Center for Atmospheric Research is involved in this. And we have scientists from NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, who are going to be doing demos and have one of their telescopes on the campus outside the observatory observing the solar corona. But one thing we did, myself and my colleague Aaron Shaw, who's new to Butler and is going to be taking over the observatory this coming year, we trained 6 groups of community scientists on February 3rd. You can see each one of them has their telescope set up here. They get to keep, after this, and they're going to take to various sites. There's 35 of these sites all along the US, all along the path. They're going to make a movie of the solar corona because they just set telescopes all along the path and can then create a movie. And the teams we have, just to show you, Vincennes High School, Lincoln High School, Eminence High School, a former student of mine is there, Pike Township High School. We've got some undergraduates from the University of Indianapolis, Union City High School, Pathfinders 4-H Club of Stark County, Ohio, because we had to take over some of Ohio also because they weren't, their state leaders weren't doing well in finding groups. But these community scientists are going to be actually taking data for this $2 million project. Like I said, we're going to have one of these at Butler also. And the reason they chose Butler is because we are one of the free events in Indianapolis, where there's no charge, where there's free parking, where the community is welcome, at no charge. And we're going to have plenty of solar telescopes around too. So, and just to let you know, this shows the telescopes that we are involved in, what we're plopping around on right smack dab on the path of totality. And our teams had to go out this last weekend and actually do imaging of the sun, not at necessarily at these locations, but from their home location. And so this is really an interesting project to create a movie of the polarization of the solar corona. So it is real science we're going to be doing, and there's going to be some going on at Butler. Now, what are we going to be doing that day? As you know, we're going to be open. I think I had the first slide, noon to 4:30 p.m. You say, well, why not till 5 or 6? I see other people are open till that. I can speak from experience that once totality ends, you can't beat it. There's nothing more to see, okay? A partial eclipse in no way prepares you or is comparison to total eclipse. It is amazing. When I was down in Southern Illinois, within 10 minutes of totality after it ended, half the people left. And then by 20 minutes, 90% were gone. They had it home because partial eclipse is in no way can compare to this totality that you'll see. And I always tell people a partial solar eclipse in no way at all, if you've seen one, prepares you for totality. It just can't even, you know, it's sort of like it's the difference, and I've done both these, fly in a plane and jump out of one. Just because you flew in a plane, it prepares you in no way for jumping out of a plane, okay? And I can tell you that from experience. It's completely different, okay? Or as I think another quote is, it's the same as kissing a girl as marrying her, okay? So there's two completely different things there, all right? So I just really want to stress, get in the path of totality if you aren't. So, this just shows you how we're going to scatter telescopes all over the North Mall of Butler University. We've even had school groups from Lexington, Kentucky, and Chicago asking about parking buses at Hinkle Fieldhouse and things like that. And we're going to have all our guides who work at the observatory, a lot of our physics and astronomy students. We're going to have the researchers from Southwest Research Institute and NCAR. They're also with their telescope and doing demos for the public and showing them what they're doing. And if you want to learn more of this and see this actually in full dome on the observatory planetarium, Friday and Saturday evenings, we are running programming every Friday, Saturday. It starts at 7 right now. The door's open. This is going to shift as we get into daylight savings time. That's why I put the little footnote down here. But and you might say, well, what if that show fills up? We keep running shows as long as people want them after. So if people come at, say, this first show fills up, we run a second show, okay? And then the people who are waiting for that, they go up and start looking at Jupiter or the moon or something like that. Then we rotate the thing. So generally, we have this handled very well. And we are going to get a reservation system, by the way, come mid-March, because we know we're going to start to get a lot more people coming to our shows. We already have, I think it's 50 just private group tours, not weekend tours, but 50 private group tours scheduled between now and April 8th. And those, we're adding like 3 or 4 of those a day. So we're getting a lot of people coming in. We're going to probably be changing the schedule to offer even more shows as the demand picks up. But right now, Friday and Saturday evenings, you can follow our webpage and see how those shows are going. So I'm going to close it at that and just say thank you for having me. I hope this was educational. And like I said, I can't really prepare you for the eclipse. You got to see it for yourself. But it does tell you what to look for, some of those things that make this special. So I'll leave that slide up there and let you guys ask questions. And I noticed you guys had the chat window going there, and I wasn't looking at it. So I probably because I'd have to, oh, I see there. Okay. So if anyone wants to ask questions or lead the question discussion here, go ahead.
Yeah, so Greg put in the chat, how did the ancient Mayans respond? What did they do? Did they think it was a good omen, a bad omen when they had a total eclipse?
I know,
conjecture?
yeah, I know from some of our planetarium program how the Chinese reacted to it. They thought it was a dragon eating the sun. And they would bang drums and things like that to scare it away, literally. By the time I think it was the ancient Persians, but the Mayans did get to the point, I believe, where they could predict when these things would likely occur if they did. Not exactly the exact path of totality. but the Persians did too, and certainly the Greeks did, ancient Greeks, were able to predict approximately what day and where within a day or so where they would occur. So I will say this can scare even people in modern times. My brother, who lives in Augusta, Georgia, he had just went like 50 to 100 miles up into South Carolina, and he was trying to get outside of the clouds, and the cloud came over like 10 minutes before totality. So he moved a few miles, and they're parked at this gravel crossroads with some other people. Someone stopped their car in the middle of totality screaming because they didn't know a total eclipse was going to occur. They said it's the end of the world. They literally thought it was, and they had to calm the person down. So that is still, I mean, that gives me an idea. Even nowadays, people who don't know, and I'm sure that's going to be the case. And I already know the DOT is telling people do not pull off the road during totality because they don't want people stopping in the middle of like I-465, for instance. So look at, because they might not know what's occurring and start putting on their brakes. They're trying to put all this warning out to get the word. There is going to be a total solar eclipse. And I guarantee you some people won't get that. And there will be this issue with that. So obviously 99% or more will. Okay, so I see. How do we know if our neighborhood where we live in the path of totality in southern Hamilton County? You are in it, I can tell you that, okay? You don't have to, the only thing going further south, you're going to have at least 3 minutes, I believe, up at 146th Street. Okay, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of more 3 minutes, 15 seconds. So you'll have a significant amount. It's as you get toward sort of that up toward Kokomo here. And if I go back on my slide here, can you see that one right there? And that shows that I picked it so it was smack dab over Indianapolis. But you can see Hamilton County right up here, you would be fine. And like I said, Kokomo gets pretty much split in two here, as does, I believe, Crawfordsville. But if you're even where my cursor is right here, you're still going to get 1.5 minutes of totality right there, okay? Let's go backwards there. Find that one. So there we are. So you will still, even right here, you will get 2 minutes of close to 2 minutes of totality. It's as you get to the edge, it starts to slope off very quickly. So, other questions?
Just speak up, folks, if you've got a question.
I think I answered the questions in the, so.
Yeah, I live in West Lebanon a little bit, so I'm sure I'm.
Yeah, it looks like you're going to be fine here. You're going to be close, so be careful because Lebanon's what? That's 32 there, is that right?
I'm right. I'm 6 miles west of 65 on 32.
Okay, so I think you're going to be right about here.
Yeah.
Okay. Somewhere, because somewhere in this vicinity here, you'll get about 1 minute or 2 minutes of it. But go to our website. If you go to Eclipse, and you'll see it. There's a thing called Indiana Eclipse 2024. Click on that, and you'll see a thing where it says, "Go here for timing of your eclipse and how long it lasts." Okay, and that will give that to you.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah. Mary, I had a question. Lower hand here.
Go ahead.
How high in the horizon is it going to be? And part of the reason I asked that is because I work in downtown Indianapolis. Well, although I'm hoping to get to Butler, but if I do have to be here in downtown Indianapolis, will the buildings get in the way if I'm near some of the taller ones?
It can. In fact, the Pacers organization had myself and Aaron Shaw down to look. They were thinking about having something on Bicentennial Plaza. And we said, you could, but you're going to have to stand over here. And then you have the Hyatt sitting there. And it looked like part of it would be in the way. It's going to be south-southwest, 50 degrees up. That's sort of what to look for. Okay. And by the way, if you go to the website that I have, and I see someone put one, eclipse safety here, but thank you for doing that. But if you go to our website, it's called Indiana Eclipse 2024. Just type in Holcomb Observatory, click on it. You'll see it off in the menu bar on the left side. That will give you the times. If you find your location, it'll even give you the altitude, direction to look, things like that. It won't tell you what buildings may be in the way or trees. Okay.
Sure.
But you can go out and stand where you think you want to watch it and see, okay, 50 degrees up, will it be in my way? Okay.
Thank
What do
you.
you think the odds are that we'll have clear weather for that?
It
In
depends what they say clear is. Okay. Standard is 55% sunny. Okay. But I saw another study that said the way you really should look at this is the amount of sunlight that you can actually see coming through, not through thick clouds. My first eclipse was in 1979, and that was in Manitoba in the middle of winter. Don't ask me why. I played hooky from the university for close to 5 days. This is before email, texting, phone, voicemail. So my professors didn't know where the heck we went. Like 7 or 8 of us undergrads physics students. Hey, let's take a road trip on a Friday night. But that one had pretty thick cirrus cloud, but we could still see the corona fine. We didn't get the shadow bands I described, but it was still absolutely spectacular. So they may have considered that sort of mostly what's referred to as mostly cloudy. If it's called mostly sunny, that's good. Okay. If you do those sort of definitions, you can get yourself to, okay, we have maybe a 60% chance of seeing this, okay, at any given location. But I would also request that maybe you want to consider being mobile too, okay? Because it could be just that you have a grouping of clouds over you that if you move 3-4 miles north, south, whatever, you might get yourself into where totality is, okay? And in 2017, we had a sort of a cumulus cloud hanging to the left of the sun. And I told the WTHR crew, I said, how fast can you guys run? Because it wasn't a big cloud. I said, if we run to the end of this parking lot, it might be clear over there. I said, we can run. Okay. Luckily, as I said, the clouds dissipated in those final 10 or so minutes. Okay. But do be prepared. Like my brother had to do that. He had to move like 3 miles, just go to another location because he saw this cloud was going to be sort of spritzing on him, so to speak, at his location.
Brian, I've got a question.
Sure.
Sorry, Mary.
That's good.
Concerning your Friday night evening specials,
Yeah.
do you need to register for those, or do you just show up?
No, it's like I said, first come, first serve. And like I said,
Okay,
if the first show fails, we'll run another one. You'll just do your telescope viewing first and then do the show second. Okay.
Thank you. Enjoyed your presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
forward
Glad
to
I
it.
could educate you guys on this. So,
If you've saved your glasses from 2017, are they still good for this?
Well, officially, I would not recommend them. Okay.
Well, good
I say
question
that
then.
officially. Okay.
There's your answer, Wendy. Get some new ones.
Yeah, and you can also check them. I mean, the reason is if they get any bends in them in the mylar or anything like that, that could let some more light through, or even a pinhole that's in them too. Okay, that's the main problem that astronomers worry about. If you have some that are only 3 years old, that's sort of the general thing that we say is about 3 years old, if that makes sense. Okay. We do sell them at the observatory during our weekend shows right now, $2 a piece, which is, by the way, cheap. To get that even close to that price on Amazon, you have to buy like 100. Okay. We're keeping the prices at $2 all the way through March. Now, as we get into April, we'll probably have to limit people more how many we sell to each person. We still have a supply that should get us at least through March on this one. Okay. Okay. Besides the observatory, local, I would say you're probably looking online. The question is, are there any other local stores selling eclipse glasses? You might find some at Walmart or something like that, okay? Or you might they might be selling them. I haven't checked, okay? Because I buy mine at 3,000 at a time, which Walmart typically doesn't have. When you buy them in bulk, like 5,000, I can get them at a pretty good price, okay? But do make sure, as someone mentioned, they have that ISO a seal on them, and you can look at, if you go like our webpage, go to the Eclipse Indiana 2024, we have the recommendations there too of what to look for in the glasses. Okay. I know the other places that are going to have them, like Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they're going to give a pair to each person coming in. And there's a $20 charge to get in, but I think that's going to be really a lot of out-of-towners who need a place to park. But I don't know. I can't really tell you who's selling them. All right. You might actually just find them in stores. Okay. That's a recommendation, just to go online and see if there are any local ones you can buy. Okay.
Any other questions for our speaker today?
There's one Amazon. Okay.
Well, Dr. Murphy, thank you so much for being with us today. We've learned a lot, and I know we're all excited for this once-in-a-lifetime event. We are going to donate a fund in your name to the 100 cameras for 100 kids, and their mission is to provide 100 deserving kids with cameras each year, fostering creativity, self-expression, and the development of important life skills. Through the lens of cameras, they can tell their stories, document their journeys, and explore the world around them in an entirely new way. And so now it's time for the dad joke. And this isn't a dad joke, it's just a joke I heard. So this 60-year-old man was walking along the beach and he found this lamp. And so he picks it up and he rubs it, and out pops a genie. And the genie says, "I can grant you anything you want, but only one wish." The man thinks about it and he says, "Well, you know, I've been married to my wife a long time, and it'd really be nice to have a wife who's 30 years younger than me. That's my wish." And the genie says, "Now, are you sure? Because I can't give it back to you." He says, "Yeah, that's what I want." And so the genie said, "Fine." Poof, the man turned 90 years old. So be careful what you ask for. All right, and with that, we are adjourned, and have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.